All right, y'all. We are back with our girl. I am legally hyped. Don't believe the hype. Believe the hype. Okay. Make sure you break it down for them all. And we got so many things that we need to tackle. How was your holiday, really quickly?
My holidays was bomb. Thank you for asking me. I got to see some family, a little break from school. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? How about
I know
yours?
that's right. Well, there were some people that wanted to take a break, but instead their break is going to be spent in jail. And one of those people are Tory Lanez. Now, we were following this whole fiasco for quite some time, but now he was finally charged. Three charges. He's facing 22 years. What can you tell us that we may have missed, or what we don't know?
Okay, so boom. So it was a lot going on with the Tory Lanez case. So yeah, he was convicted of three charges right before Christmas, right? So one of them was like assault with a deadly weapon, basically.
Mhm.
It was being in a vehicle with a loaded handgun. And I think the gun was unregistered, right? And then there was one more charge, can't think off the top of my head, but he was convicted of all three charges, all felonies, right? He's also not an American citizen. So on top of the 22 years he could face in prison, he is also facing deportation once he's done serving his time, which means he will not be allowed to come back to America, when he's done. So yeah, really serious charges here.
Right. Right. And then there was a lot of people that were confused, right? Meg took the stand. Kelsey took the stand. Tory was the one that was facing 22 years. Why did he not take the stand?
Okay, so boom. So a lot of times defendants don't take the stand because you don't want the prosecution to be able to ask you a question that opens up a door, that gives the jury information that you don't necessarily want, right? Because
Mhm.
once you open that door and say the wrong thing, the prosecution is going to dig in and dig in and dig in. And so a lot of times you don't hear defendants testify, not because they don't want to, but just as a strategy. It's like there's certain rules to evidence, right? There's certain so certain statements can't be brought in, certain evidence cannot be brought in unless the defendant allows it to be brought
Mhm.
in, right? And so you could do that just by saying the wrong thing. Right, and on
Right.
accident, not realizing that. And so to avoid kind of running into that trap, a lot of times defendants just use a Fifth Amendment right, remain silent,
Right.
and that way you can't even use what I said to try to hem me up in the situation.
And there was a lot of things we talked about with Kelsey at one point in time, with her pleading the fifth, with her getting some leniency. Do you think that now that everything is a little bit more out in the open, will she get in trouble for lying on the stand?
Okay, so boom. Well, did she lie or did she just say she doesn't remember? Because that was the situation happened what over a year ago, right? So maybe she doesn't remember some of those details. When you think about the fact that when this situation first happened, they were all extremely inebriated, right? Even though she may have kind of came down a little bit by the time the incident completely broke out, people's adrenalines were high, right? It's late at
Mhm.
night. People have been drinking. By the time she goes to give her statement to prosecutors, right, to the DA's office, it was a little bit, a couple of months later, right? But you still have kind of that trauma that you're dealing with, right?
Right.
And her feeling like her friend had betrayed her and this, that, and the third. So that probably stuck with her then. You a year later, this girl done had a baby, right? She on her business tip, she in a whole new relationship. It's quite possible that she just
Right.
forgot some of the stuff she said, right? But because because the defense attorney kind of kept going in on her, that opened up the door for them to be able to bring in her recorded statements. And so then the jury was able to hear what she said when she first was feeling some type of way.
So, okay, in your legal expert opinion, how long do you think Tory Lanez may do in jail, and when is he even getting sentenced?
So he is scheduled to be sentenced, I believe, January 27th.
Hmm.
Um, like I said, he's facing up to 22 years. Now, I have a different viewpoint on how people should be sentenced, right? But I think if you look at the judge is going to look at like whether he has any other prior convictions, going to look at kind of the severity of the crime, right? Did he actually intend to like shoot her, kill her, hurt her, right? Or was it, was you just being reckless? Right, which is one of the things he was actually charged with. So looking at that, I mean, I I did a poll on online on YouTube, and I would say most people agreed to between like the 5 and 10 year range. So
Okay.
I'm gonna
Right.
just throw that out there as not really my opinion, but
Yeah.
as the hypes agreed to about 5, 10 years in the pen. Some people feel like
It's
more,
funny
some
that
people
you
feel
say
like
that because I agree. I keep saying I think he's going to get 6 to 7 years and deported. I think
yeah.
the least amount I could see him doing is 5. But like after seeing those bloody pictures and hearing that call on the jail phone,
See, that was the thing. It was the phone call, right? Now you hear when they say this call may be recorded. It is. It is. It's recorded. You're not slick, right? Because they got people like me that know how to code switch that's going to go listen to the phone call and say, well, see, what he was really saying was this, right?
yeah.
So that's what got you hemmed up. Just be quiet. You don't need to talk to nobody but your lawyer about what you got going on. So a lot of people interpreted that phone call, a lot of different kind of ways. Obviously, that was the point, to try to speak in code, but the code didn't work because the DA said this is what they was really saying, and the jury bought it.
Right. And I get being comfortable on the phone like after a few months, but you were only in there for 5 hours. So
I mean,
I
when you're
wonder.
used to a certain type of lifestyle, right? That ain't really your thing. You trying to get up out of jail for real.
That's true. Well, speaking of somebody else that's trying to get up out of jail, this YSL case is just getting more and more messy. Now, they released a few names of people that will be testifying on the behalf of Thug. They also talked about the people that will be testifying against Thug. Now, there's all kind of members taking plea deals. Some people are even saying that Thug may be home and will be able to beat this anyway. How likely is that?
Okay, so boom, it is going to depend, right? So this case is scheduled to last 6 months to a year, right?
Wow.
It's supposed to start in January. The last we heard, a lot of defendants still didn't even have attorneys, right? Although they were, verifying witnesses and experts and stuff like that. Some of these people don't even have attorneys, so it's not likely that it would actually start trial in January. But there are a lot of people taking deals because with a RICO, as long as you was involved in at least one piece of this, you're going to get punished for everything that's going on. So even though you didn't have nothing to do with the murders, you still getting in trouble for the murders because you are a part of this group, which is why a lot of people are taking plea deals because they like, I'm not doing 22 years for stealing a car, right? Like,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be. So that's where the plea deals are coming from. In terms of if he's gonna beat this case, we gonna see. It really depends on what the prosecution has, right? There's still gonna be motions filed to exclude evidence. I know that he's won a few of those motions. I've seen or whatever. So it just depends. It depends on what kind of jury you get because you got to find what 12 to 16 people at least that can sit for a trial for 6 months to a year, which means you taking off work, right? If you have children, you have to figure out a new like childcare and stuff like that for your kids. So that is gonna be interesting.
So the jury process alone may just take them 6 months because, like you said, who has 6 months to just go to court every day? And
Yeah, unless your job pays you for jury duty, right? And a lot of these
right.
jobs, I don't know how it is in Georgia, but a lot of these jobs in California, they don't pay for jury duty,
Yeah,
or they don't pay
you're
you
gonna
the
come
full.
back to no job.
You're gonna be a
What is
professional juror.
I know, right? So what about the people or what does it mean for Young Thug for the fact that all these people are getting plea deals except for him?
Well, because they believe that he's the head of the snake, right? And so the thing is, you are the ultimate prize. That's what we want to take down. So they're not going to give him a plea deal because they don't, the little ones are pawns, right? To leading up to that big one. So, of course, they're going to try to get as many of them on their team as possible to try to help take down the snake.
Right.
It could possibly happen, right? At some point, they may offer him a plea deal, which will probably be close to whatever he's looking at now. But these plea deals are interesting, right? Like people facing 15, 20 years and they get plea deals for 1 year probation, 1 year in jail, 30 years probation, right?
Yeah.
So it goes, you start to question what type of evidence do you really have, right? And if you have to get this many people, if these are the type of deals you're handing out for a case that you have led the public to believe was so severe, but yet you are so easily letting these same people out on the street, right, with these plea deals, it begs the question on the one hand of like, what kind of evidence do you really got, or like what's really going on, right?
Yeah.
So there's two ways to look at it. At the same time, it could be like, yeah, these guys are bad, but the worst of the worst, we're treating them this way. But the ultimate problem, we're going to take him down, which means they don't have a resource. They don't have a tree to eat off of anymore.
It's starting to look like the evidence are the people that's around. And that was the whole point from the beginning, because they might have known these guys were going to tell. And speaking of gonna tell, that's the thing that everybody's saying now, right? That gonna is telling, or whatever the case. Now, they did have some people speak out on his behalf, lawyers that said, oh, well, when he gets on the stand, he's simply going to plead the fifth. What's the odds of him being able to go up there and say absolutely nothing?
Okay, so boom. So first and foremost, they don't have to call him, right? He may be on the list, but they don't have to call him. Second of all, he can plead the fifth if what he's pleading the fifth about is a crime that he is somehow connected to, or it affects him, right? Now, if it's a crime that somebody else committed, or it don't have nothing to do with him, you can't really plead the fifth, because what you're saying is, I'm protecting my right, my constitutional right, not to tell on myself in the process, right? So for example, like say me and you go somewhere and you'd be like, oh, hold this, right? And you hold this knife, and I don't know it's a murder weapon. I'm like, all right, cool. And then we later on find out, well, now I'm an accessory because I got your murder weapon and I didn't know it was a murder weapon at first, right? I'm going to plead the fifth when they ask me about that murder weapon, because what you're not going to do is say I'm an accessory after the fact, or whatever the case may be. So unless there's some sort of connection like that, you can't really plead the fifth on the case. So he might just want to pray they don't call him.
Because if they do, he going to have to say a little something about a little something.
If he knows something, or if he don't recall, he don't recall. But if he recall, then he said what he needs to say.
Lord, well, last but not least, let's talk a little bit about the House of Republicans, because we know you've been going up about this topic, and we got to let the people know what's going on.
Okay, so boom, the little repo rights do not have, they don't have a speaker, right? So they were expecting to have this red wave during the midterms. That didn't happen, but they did get the House of Representatives, which is really important, because the House of Representatives, right? The Speaker of the House is third in line for the presidency. So if something were to happen to Biden or Kamala, they're going to step up, right? The Speaker of the House gets to decide what legislation would be heard in the House, when the legislation will be heard in the House. If there is no speaker, there is no program, right? That means the House can't do any work. So right now you have Kevin McCarthy, who was at 203 votes at the close yesterday. They did 3 rounds of ballots. Hakeem Jeffries was at 212, I believe. So every Democrat is like, we rocking with Jeffries. And then there were 19 standouts, I think, the first 2 times that voted for Jim Jordan. And then the third round of votes, there were 20 that went in the direction of other or Jordan, right? And so McCarthy does not have the votes as of right now. He does not have the support of Republicans, or he didn't have it the first day of the vote, right? So the House can't do anything until we get that. Right now, the clerk, she'd have had the House right now.
Really?
But we can't do any work. The government is stopped. Now, this is not the first time we've seen this, right? This happened, 1923? Right?
So this is the first time we've seen it.
Right. The first time we've seen it personally, right? But you think about, the government kind of stalls on things like this all the time. They just do it in different ways. So, but now it's bad because it's one party within a party. So now people looking at the Republican Party like, well, why y'all weren't prepared? How come y'all didn't have a little conversation? Y'all didn't have a picnic or nothing before, before January 3rd. Y'all knew this day was coming. It come every year. It's been coming every year.
So what were they doing? Twiddling their thumbs?
They claimed they was talking about it, but apparently that's what they was doing. But he didn't moved into the speaker the speaker office and everything. So I guess he was too busy decorating.
Ah, man. So no more Nancy Pelosi. What does she do now?
Nancy, she's just a House member as of now, and then when it's her time to be reelected, or when her time comes up, she may or may not run again. I think she did insinuate that she probably won't be running again. Hakeem Jeffries will likely be the minority leader for the House of Representatives for the Democrats. So now we're just waiting to figure out what the repo rights is going to do. Are y'all going to work with some Democrats to try to make this work, which is what you should do if you're working on
Yeah.
behalf of the American people? Or
Mm-hmm.
y'all going to figure out how to get all y'all soldiers on the same squad?
Well, thank you so much. I am Legally Hype. You always keep us up to date on what we need to know. Let the people know where they can follow you, where they can find you, where they can get that merch at.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's I Am Legally Hype. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and you can go to legallyhype.com to get your merch. Okay,
All right, we're going to see you next week and talk about everything else because I'm sure there's a ton more mess that's going to happen between now and then.
It's going to be lit.
All right, see you next week.
All right, bye.
Alita
Have a
Hype.
good one.
We are the morning hustle.